Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ecommerce Odyssey podcast. I'm here with Lesley Hensell from Riverbend Consulting. Lesley, could you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. So Riverbend Consulting specializes in helping Amazon sellers with the problems that they have on the marketplace. Amazon is really aggressive towards sellers. And so we help them to solve problems like suspensions, or when their inventory is stranded, or when Amazon just won't reply when they need help, when a seller needs help with their account. Also, we help with some growth strategies as well, like editorial recommendations, videos, and other things that'll get your listings noticed on the platform.
Excellent, because I know from experience that there are lots of problems on the Amazon platform. So I expect you're very, very busy. So what do you, these days when Amazon's getting more and more crowded, I mean, you go onto it, there's just any amount of everything on it. What are you seeing the most successful sellers are doing? How are people winning in this crowded marketplace?
Well, the easiest and most straightforward strategy is to really maximize the quality of your listings. And I know that sounds really trite, and people have been saying it for years, but if you really go out there and spend some time in the catalog, you'll see that there are so many listings that are poor quality. Amazon is really doubling down on listing quality score. They're rejiggering their own algorithm all the time, and they are very focused right now on boosting the results for listings that have better quality, including video. Video is tremendously huge on the platform, and there's a lot of favored search results, especially on mobile, for listings that have video attached to them. So the sellers that we're seeing do really well are spending a lot of time with listing optimization, keyword optimization, and then making sure that they have lifestyle photos. They have optimized copy. They've done all of the things they can do to make their listing pop up in search faster, and also to then recreate that result with paid. So you really do have to invest in paid media on Amazon now. You have to do pay-per-click advertising. Mm-hmm. You can also do video ads. For a long time, people didn't want to invest that money, and there were workarounds. Well, now that you cannot get away with all of the various forms of review manipulation and product giveaways, and they're really cracking down on those things, it is super important that you invest in paid media in a smart way, but also optimize your listing. When you don't do those two things, you can actually pop up 1, 2, 3 times on the first page of search.
Mm-hmm. So it's getting the basics right, which is really the case in e-commerce generally. I think the quality listings, and you have to start, run, and to get positioning, you really need to be spending money on paid media these days.
You really do. And it sounds so basic. And yet, even some really good selling products out there have not optimized their listings. And I'm really shocked sometimes at the major brands that don't really have a great e-commerce strategy for Amazon, or their strategy was kind of an afterthought. So major household products that you buy every day at a grocery store or corner market, if you go on Amazon and look at their listings, a lot of times they're garbage. There's no A+ content, there's no nothing, right?
I think it's a kind of tragedy of the commons thing going on, because lots of people selling on the same listing, and therefore that's why you're getting these kind of challenger brands coming in, because it's them. They're the only person selling on that listing, so they're really incentivized to make a really good listing. Whereas if you've got the kind of household grocery kind of items, which should be doing well, Amazon's always been a small part of what they do. They sell through wholesalers. No one really owns a listing, and therefore it kind of atrophies. I think it gets created by lots of people, and it's right. No one cares for it.
Exactly. And so if the major brand doesn't go out and get Amazon brand registry and invest the time, you can actually compete against them as a small seller for exactly the reasons that you said. Because if you're willing to invest in PPC, you're willing to have those lifestyle images and have that great content, you're going to be rewarded by that algorithm if you do a really great job, and you really can compete that way. So the back to the basics, it sounds so simple, and you're like, oh, everyone's already doing that. No, actually they're not. And then the other biggest challenge right now, I think, that great sellers are the ones doing it the right way, is making sure they don't run out of stock. When you run out of stock on Amazon, your listing, it just goes down the tubes really fast, right? You lose all of your rank that you've worked so hard, your bestseller ranking. And so people who can really manage that and have found ways to stay in stock, they are really being rewarded right now.
Mm-hmm. So do you find, I mean, my experience with Amazon is that it's becoming a more difficult platform to sell on. They are always creating new, there's new metrics, and always just, saying for, seller fulfilled Prime, you had to start shipping on a Saturday. Do you think that is because, they're trying to get rid of sellers by making it more difficult for sellers?
I don't think they're trying to get rid of sellers. I think there are a lot of forces at work, and sometimes Amazon has policies that probably make sense to the people internal at Amazon to meet some certain goal, but to the rest of us on the outside, it's obviously not working the way that it's intended. So, for example, the seller fulfilled Prime, wow, the new metrics around that are just crazy. You really have to offer 1 day if you want to have seller fulfilled Prime instead of it being 2 day. It's a hot mess. Here in the United States, where we have such wide geographic spread, it is almost impossible to do it unless you have multiple warehouses that can ship the same day. So Amazon thought, we're going to make sure that customers have the same experience as if things are shipping from an Amazon fulfillment center. So we're going to have these super strict rules. And, Seller Fulfilled Prime was created to actually offer more selection available at prime speed. And then Amazon completely undid that and went backwards for the customer experience, because they've actually shut all of these seller fulfilled Prime sellers out of the marketplace who can't do it, don't want to do it.
You've got, in my experience, it was on Amazon, you've got almost different, you've got one side of Amazon ringing you up saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Why don't you do SFP? And then the other side of Amazon is creating these very difficult metrics, which are very difficult to actually meet. And I had a discussion with an Amazon account manager, and they said, it's because, customers are always expecting more and we're trying to meet that. And I was like, no, from my opinion is they expect more because you tell them that they should be expecting more. And
the great irony is during the time they created the new SFP rules, it was right before COVID, right, when they put all of that into place. And then during COVID, Amazon wasn't meeting any of its shipping goals, and they still don't. So there are a lot of SFP sellers who've stopped doing SFP who are probably beating Amazon's metrics. I have stuff delayed all the time. I have like 5 fulfillment centers near my house. So a lot of times I can receive items the same day. But then there will be something that I don't get for 5 days, 6 days that was supposed to be 2 day Prime. So Amazon, blithely ignores all of the rules for itself. And yet they're putting these expectations on third-party sellers that make no sense. And then they reduce selection on their own platform for speedy delivery. It makes no sense at all.
See, I'm just thinking about Amazon, right? That is what I would call it. I call the Amazon deep state, right? So you've got what you can see, that you can use that. You've got what you can see at the top. Right, and then you've got what is going on underneath, which is all stuck together with sticky tape, and what do you think? I mean, do you think that because I think that people have this impression that Amazon is a very slick organization, but I see these problems like you see, and I think like their catalog is very hard to use. If you've got a problem, it's very hard to fix.
Yes.
And if you fall foul of a rule, it can be almost impossible to fix it. So what do you think? I mean, do you think that is it becoming unwieldy as an organization?
Yes, and part of the issue is that it's a very siloed organization that values an entrepreneurial spirit inside of the organization. So each person is supposed to be very self-motivated and meet their own goals and push forward these projects, and they're not really working in concert with everyone else. So when you talk about things held together with sticky tape, we talk a lot about rubber bands and paper clips, because the technology systems at Amazon, the backend technology, they don't all work together. There's a reason Seller Central has not been updated in 11 years, except for these little tiny patches that they've thrown on, like the widgets on the home page. A true upgrade has not happened. And it's because it's all of these different little pieces of programming. The entire organization is run that way. I have 15 ex-Amazon employees on my staff, and they talk a lot about the goals being set by different managers that didn't match, or the goal that was set by a director over here and he had no idea what the operational effect was on the other side of the organization. So much of that really happens there. It's such a highly thought of company, and they've done so many groundbreaking things. And let's face it, the online marketplace they've created is amazing and unlike anything literally in the history of the world. And yet the organization does not run in a cohesive fashion the way that you might think. So someone might say, okay, we really need to cut back on counterfeits on the platform. And so they will have this directive for seller performance, and then they will over enforce and they will catch up all of these sellers that aren't selling counterfeit, for example, or restricted products. We've all seen that with pesticides and other restricted products.
Yes, pesticides. So you've got if a product gets flagged as something, you can't say to them, look, you get something which isn't a pesticide, and there'll be a thing saying, tell us why you can sell this pesticide. And you can't just write to them and say, look, it isn't a pesticide. Look,
it's a t-shirt.
It's a t-shirt, whatever. But it's things like that. And they'll write back and say, well, look, it's a pesticide. We say, it isn't a pesticide. I don't know. In the UK, we have this like a comedy called Little Britain. And there's a character in that who goes, computer says no when people ask him a question. And it really is like that with Amazon, that you cannot talk to anyone, and the support will only answer that you'll ask them a question and they'll answer the question they know the answer to and not the one you asked.
Yes.
That is
It's so true.
Discussing Amazon here.
Well, and I can actually explain the restricted products torture to you. So restricted products, pesticides, and when you get fake flags for adult products and you get fake flags for ingredients in a supplement and they're wrong, the people inside of Amazon have been told, and this is real, they have been told that their technology is almost infallible. It's 99.5%. It's really great. Excuse me. So that when something is flagged for one of these reasons, that they can trust that the flag is accurate. And so people on the front line, the first level person who's looking at your appeal, they pretty much do not feel empowered to overturn that, because they're going to believe the technology. And they've also been told a lot of these directives are from legal, because when it comes to things like restricted products, those are based on some kind of a law. It's based on the EPA here in the United States, the Environmental Protection Agency. That's where all the pesticide stuff comes from. And there are other restricted products that are based on prohibited ingredients, for example. So it's all legally based. So they do not feel like they can overcome and say, oh, okay, you're telling me that this isn't a pesticide, so I'm good. So at our company, we write appeals for people all day long. We write account appeals and ASIN appeals. And in our ASIN appeals, most of the time with restricted products, they are not successful at the front line. We escalate to other people in the Amazon organization and say, hey, look over there. They're not enforcing the policy right. Help me out. And that's how we get it solved.
So, I mean, because it's interesting with restricted, with accounts being blocked. I mean, my experience is that it's, that you have to go through a very specific process of appealing, and I refer to it as starting at maximum grovel. So you've got to no matter if they just expect you to go through a process of basically saying, just completely prostrating yourself in front of Amazon and saying, oh, most powerful Amazon, we're really just so completely sorry. We just, and then just making more outlandish promises until they accept your promises. And but the really difficult thing is, I mean, if an account gets quote unquote permanently shut down, getting it reopened is extremely hard.
Yes, it is.
So what would your advice be to someone who has had their account suspended, to sort the problem out?
So the very important thing, what you want to avoid at all costs, is to get that we may not respond to further appeals or email. That message is when it goes from difficult to really difficult,
next to
right?
impossible.
Yes. So if and when you get hey, your account is suspended, or you're going to be suspended in 72 hours, give us an appeal. The first thing is to not knee jerk. A lot of people, the reason their appeals fail is that they knee jerk, and they either defend themselves and say, we didn't do anything. You're wrong. What are you talking about? They ask Amazon for information, which Amazon is not going to give you information. Sorry. They expect you to know everything. Or they write an appeal that is essentially meaningless. It doesn't actually address the problem at hand. So groveling, while it has its place, because you do have to take responsibility, you really have to show them that you know what they are talking about. So that means taking a step back, trying to not be emotional, and look at your account. So if it's about condition, it's used, sold as new, go through all of the reports that they have available, go through all the comments and the feedback and the reviews, and look for instances where people complained that something wasn't new. Look through your messages and try and, even if it's not really valid, which happens. I have a lot of clients who've been suspended, and frankly, I don't think they should have been. It was over enforcement. However, you still have to take it seriously and look through all the data as if it is valid, and spend that time, invest that time, and base an appeal on those facts the best you can, without being defensive. And I get it that people don't want to admit fault, especially if you're not really at fault. But you still have to find something to cop to, find something that you can say, we can do better. This is what we can do better.
Yeah, because I think what I mean by full grovel is, no excuses. You've got to accept it and say, yes, we are at fault. We recognize that we recognize we did this. This is how we fixed it. I think basically again, it's simple stuff. You have to do exactly what they ask, and you have to do it within the criteria that they set, and say, okay, and then just they'll come back to you and say, give us more detail. And you might just think, what always goes through my head is, come on, I can't give you any more detail. But you just have to dig deeper and find some more detail, and just think, how can I, because they're always just, it's a box ticking exercise, isn't it? And then you've just got to know what the boxes they want ticked. And I think this is why, because I think a lot of people aren't particularly good at writing. And also, as you say, if they haven't seen one of these problems before, they get all kind of worked up about it. And it's just a question of, just doing it in a methodical way, I think. Anyway, that's mine.
Yes. And God forbid you blame Amazon. Don't do that, even if it's their fault. Because sometimes it is their fault. For example, on a condition appeal where someone says they received something that was used and it's supposed to be new, if you use FBA, their returns grading processes are terrible. They're absolutely horrid. And so they will accept things back from consumers that should be thrown in the garbage, and they will put it back in sellable and then resell it. And that's what the consumer got. And that is not your fault, but you have to find a way to say how you're going to improve. And it behooves you to do so, because if you can find workarounds to the ways Amazon is hurting your account, you're only going to improve your profitability and your operations and, the money you put in your pocket every day. So you can't say, so great example is expiration. People expect Amazon to manage their expiration dates. People expect Amazon to actually do first in, first out. Amazon does not do first in, first out. They transship inventory all over the country. Sometimes they transship it across borders. They can't do first in, first out. It's a nice idea. It doesn't happen. So you cannot expect that they're going to sell out, if you're a supplement seller, that they're going to sell out the whole lot that you sent in before they start selling the next lot you sent in. So you have to find a way to manage those expiration dates instead of ending up with expired inventory and having angry customers and getting the ASIN shut down and blaming Amazon, even though it's probably really their fault.
Right. Yeah. So I think this is there's, this is an example, I think, of Amazon just becoming more and more difficult to deal with, and expecting, I found that with SFP, for example, that they give themselves the right to do whatever they like, and it's never their fault. and they never delivered anything late. And, as a seller, you have to kind of, and they'll just refund the customer under all circumstances. And I think it's very easy to be the world's most customer-centric company if you just give customers back their money all the time, which is very easy for Amazon because it isn't their money. I think I don't know. I'm despite spending a lot of my time on Amazon, I'm actually in some ways not a particularly big fan of it. I mean, it's a machine that works amazingly well, but I think it's a pity there's not more competition. I think it's a pity that you don't have, that eBay didn't manage to get bigger, or that Google or these other companies didn't have more of a competitor to Amazon. Because one day, what monopolies do, and Amazon is a monopoly, is they start to offer bad service to people and they start to put up the prices. That's just what monopolies do. And you see, I think, in the way they treat sellers appallingly, and they can do that because of their only show in town. And with, I don't know what your experience is, but I mean, with eBay, that we've had, my retail company had a problem with eBay. I just wrote to the eBay managing director and said, come on, we're nice people, can you help us out? Next day, the problem got sorted. I wrote to Jeff in Seattle and just got a message back saying, Jeff doesn't care, basically. So
well, and I absolutely agree with you that the goal is to be customer centric. It's also easy to be customer centric when the bottom line is not actually your focus. I'm not saying they don't want to make money. I'm saying that isn't the number one goal. The number one goal is increasing their market reach, increasing the number of prime customers. It's a long-term play, right? Because their profitability is actually coming from AWS right now.
Yes.
More so than retail. So in retail, it's just to improve the Amazon brand, expand it more, be the great and powerful Oz on the retail side, even if you have to give a lot of concessions to do it, and they're okay with that. Vendors and sellers get the brunt of it. Both vendors and sellers have fraught relationships with Amazon, and Amazon really does believe every single one of us is replaceable. I'm replaceable on the platform. You're replaceable on the platform. We're all replaceable. Yes. Because someone else will step in with another product. So it really is difficult. They used to be more seller centric. They used to believe more in the seller partner relationship. I think some of that has gotten lost with the growth.
Yeah. So do you think, where do you think Amazon's heading? Do you think that the kind of the status quo is going to continue, or do you think that they're going to have to become a bit nicer, or they're just going to continue becoming more horrible?
That's a really good question. There is a lot of noise about regulation here in the United States. I know there already has been some in the EU and some enforcement for anti-competitive and monopolistic behaviors. A lot of noise about that here as well, that I think it's going to force them to step back a bit. Recently, there was a real problem here in the US. I know it was rolled out a little bit in the UK, but I don't think it was the full thing, where Amazon had the Amazon Standards for Brands, where they decided that they were going to dictate how third-party sellers were pricing their products. This is new. It's actually against Amazon policy, which clearly states that third-party sellers set their own pricing. But Amazon launched this entire project with a whole staff this year in January, February, and started rolling it out across the biggest sellers in the US and telling them how to price their products. And if they wouldn't price their products the way Amazon wanted them to, Amazon would restrict their access to major national brands that they've been selling for years. So, unfortunately for Amazon, when this started leaking out in the news, some governmental figures got a little upset about it, because that all sounds a whole lot like price fixing. And they that
is price fixing. That's right, because it was because they got in Europe, they used to say that you could only sell, Amazon had to be your cheapest price. So they said in the contract that you weren't allowed to sell cheaper off Amazon than you were selling on Amazon, but that is price fixing. So they had to go back on that.
And I think there was some really misguided thinking inside of Amazon, where they believed that if their price fixing was helping the consumer, by providing the consumer with the lowest cost and helping to push down prices across all platforms, that somehow that excused the price fixing. Like, price fixing to be lower is okay, just price fixing to go higher is bad. But that's not the case, because manufacturers and brand owners literally couldn't set their own pricing on Amazon because Amazon was forcing them to be at a certain rate. So I think as these things continue to happen and continue to come out, they're gonna walk back some stuff. I don't think they're ever necessarily going to get a whole lot friendlier to sellers, though. But you think sellers have it bad, vendors have it even worse. So right. Third-party sellers have a little better life, in my opinion. Not everyone agrees with me, but I would say being a third-party seller is a heck of a lot better than being a vendor.
Really, it's an undignified business, so worse than really awful. It is an undignified business, and I just think sometimes oh dearie me, after the trouble. I mean, we had multiple accounts which I basically, very much through my own fault, managed to get quote unquote permanently shut down. And the only way we managed to get them reopened was to go onto LinkedIn and find some friendly Amazon people who managed to sort it out. And it's, I think that once you have a problem which, as you say, they won't respond to you anymore, then it becomes a question of, guess why we're upset with you. And you can't guess because they won't tell you.
Right.
So it becomes next to impossible. And I think that, in the past, I mean, Amazon owns the digital high street, or main street in the USA, I'd say. And, you can't, they privatized it kind of almost like a public asset. Whereas, I mean, you can just go and open a shop. No one going to stop you opening a shop. But once Amazon has, for its own reasons, decided to shut your account down, you just can't reopen it. You can't trade. And,
right.
You've got to be really, as a seller, you've got to be really careful. You don't get yourself in that kind of situation.
Right. And you're correct about them not telling you things, especially a lot of accounts recently have started to be shut down for what they call Section 3. That is code of conduct. And code of conduct is one of those catch-alls. It could mean anything. They do have a list of things that are code of conduct violations: treating customers fairly, treating other sellers fairly, being honest, yada, yada. But it really comes down to, it can mean anything. So when we have a client come in the door with code of conduct, frequently they have no idea what they did. And one of our consultants will spend an hour on the phone with them, going through a list of questions we have that is every possible thing that we know of that can get you shut down for code of conduct. So we're asking them every single question. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Did you? And we have to convince them to tell us the truth, because
they'll be quite embarrassed about what they've done as well.
Yes, people are embarrassed, or they're afraid we're going to tell somebody, or because you know how you feel paranoid when you've done something, if you've done something, right? And you're afraid someone's going to tell someone, I don't care what you did. I just need to know so I can fix it with Amazon, so I can solve the problem for you. But yes, they're very embarrassed, but sometimes we can't even ever figure it out. And we have to go to Amazon and say, these are the things we think may have happened. And then sometimes if you give them enough information, they'll come back and say, actually, it's just this one. It was just this one. Give us more detail about that. But the positive here in the US, though, is that we are seeing more competition to Amazon with major investments by major retailers like Target and Walmart, who are pouring lots of money into their platforms. Now, are they doing a great job? Are they getting the penetration yet? The sellers I talk to tell me that they actually tend to get more sales from Target than Walmart, which surprises me, because Walmart is so much bigger and has put more investment dollars in. But regardless, there are some options that are improving, but I think Amazon is still going to have a lot of the power for a long, long time.
Yeah, that is unfortunately the case. So do you see, with, because Amazon say, they've got like a Chinese wall between their kind of the retail side and the kind of seller side. Do you think that that's true, or do you think that they use their proprietary information to kind of undercut people?
Unfortunately, I've seen several examples that prove that they use proprietary information that they are not supposed to across the organization. So they have rules that people have to take information security classes at Amazon. They have to take a test. They have to do it every, I think, 3 years to say that they know the policies, that they understand what they are and are not supposed to do. And one of those things is that individual seller data is never supposed to be shared. Only aggregate data can be shared. So aggregate data on a brand or a category can be shared, aggregate third-party seller data, but an individual seller's data is not supposed to be shared. Well, it does happen. We've seen it happen internally. We can tell by the communications from Amazon. You can connect the dots. We have seen the vendor team use brand registry information to target third-party sellers who used to be on vendor. We have seen them connect the dots to put linked accounts together when they are really not supposed to be using that particular information to put linked accounts together. And of course, everyone knows about how they use third-party data to decide to launch new products and market those products and compete with third-party sellers who have their own private label products. There is going to be a reckoning on this, whether they like it or not. Jeff Bezos got up before Congress and said that this shouldn't happen and rarely happens, and they have policies to make sure it doesn't happen. And then someone promptly leaked a massive report that was several years old that showed all of the holes in how Amazon manages this data and totally fails to enforce against employees who wrongly use this data. So if there is anything that I think Amazon should be enforced against by the federal government, or there should be legislation, it is on this particular issue, because they are violating their own policies each and every day.
So do you think that one day they're going to have to choose between being a retailer and being a marketplace? They can't, because that's going to come to an end one day.
That is what there are some legislators in the United States pushing for. I hope that doesn't happen, because that will hurt third-party sellers dramatically.
Why is that? Because they like buying from Amazon and they see the third-party sellers at the same time?
If Amazon is forced to choose, Amazon is going to choose what it has been investing its resources into, which is developing its own products. They have already put a lot of money into Amazon brands. They are not going to equally promote to platforms. It's just not going to happen. Right. I think they would drop the marketplace sellers, or it would end up being like an eBay that is an afterthought. And all of the marketing dollars are going to go into promoting what Amazon controls, which is its retail products that it purchases from vendors and the products that it sells itself. And the problem with that, these legislators wrongly believe that this is going to make things better for third-party sellers and consumers. It will actually only make Amazon more of a monopoly, because instead of third-party sellers who sell 55% of the products on Amazon, instead of having that selection available for consumers, and instead of having this wonderful incubator where people can launch new products, those will all be gone. And it will just be what Amazon buys from vendors. And they will only have a certain number of vendor relationships. And it'll be just like going into a Walmart or a Target where there's limited selection. It'll be bad for everybody.
That's a really interesting, I hadn't thought of that. That's a really interesting perspective. So tell me what are the top, obviously you get to see a lot of sellers that are having problems, right? What are the top mistakes that people make that you see?
So right now, Amazon is enforcing really hard on anything they see as review manipulation or platform manipulation. And people are continuing to use the same strategies they had for years, where they're using a Facebook group to get reviews, or they're paying someone to get reviews, or they're putting the cards into products saying, hey, get a free product if you give me a positive review. I get it.
How do they know that? Or how do they find that out?
So on the electronic data side, AWS serves the National Security Agency here in the United States, which they're the people who collect all the cell phone metadata to hunt down terrorists. So if people think that Amazon can't figure out that you have your neighbor Fred writing reviews for you, I've got a bridge to sell you out in the desert. They know. They have amazing data systems, and they will use all the public data available to link you and your reviews to your friends and neighbors who've done reviews for products. They also have reciprocal relationships with social media companies. There are reciprocal relationships. There's an agreement signed by like Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and all of these other large platforms where they're trying to stop fraud across platforms. So they will share data with each other when they see fraud. So that's how Amazon finds these Facebook groups that are sending all the referral links.
So don't do it, is what you're saying. Just don't think you're smarter than Amazon.
And now they've instituted bin checks. So they're actually in the fulfillment center going in and opening up products and looking for these cards that offer free things, which they had not done until this year. And if they catch you, they will make you remove all that inventory and pull all the cards out and send it back in. And you do not want to do that. So that's a big one. And then the second thing we're seeing a lot of that makes me very sad is that people get frustrated with Amazon, so they forge documents. So right. Amazon rejects an invoice over and over. They ask for an LOA and you don't have it. There's
LOA. Sorry, what's that?
A letter of authorization.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. They ask for any kind of document, like even if you're asking for reimbursement on a shipment that they lost at the warehouse and someone doesn't have a bill of lading, and so they fake one. Amazon detects that. They have security that detects it. They have, machines that can detect it. And then a lot of times, clients send me the invoices that they faked and sent to Amazon, and I can spot it. My ex-Amazon investigators on my team, we can find it. If we can find it, Amazon's going to find it too. And you're much better off trying to solve the problem, explaining why you don't have the invoice, going back to your manufacturer, going back to your supplier, asking for a new one, showing additional evidence like a stamped letter from your bank, showing where you paid the invoice to prove it's real. All of that effort, yes, it's a lot of effort, but it's better to go down that road than send in forged documents, because that's a suspension you do not want to have.
Right. Okay. So again, don't basically just stick to the rules under all circumstances. Okay. This has been very interesting. I've just got one last question for you. What has inspired you recently?
What has inspired me?
What interesting thing? Can be anything. What book have you read? What film have you seen? What business have you come across?
You know what? It is, we were talking off camera about this before we started. Some of you may have seen some major disasters here in the United States with some tornadoes ripping through the heartland. And it has been very inspiring to see my friends, my neighbors, people that I know who are donating money and clothes and gift cards. There have been some wonderful stories about people who have driven from states away and taken a barbecue grill and just cooked food in the middle of a town that was devastated so people would have something to eat. The people who are cleaning up that damage are not all government workers. It is volunteers who are going and cutting up trees with chainsaws and throwing them in the back of their truck and taking it to the dump. It's amazing to see thousands of people take off work around the holidays when you're supposed to be with your family and leave and go help strangers. It's fantastic.
That really is the best of America. I'm inspired by that too. So, Lesley, it's been great talking to you, and it sounds like you're like an emergency service for Amazon sellers.
We absolutely are. We catch you at your worst time and then try and make it better.
Excellent, great. It's been lovely speaking to you. Thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.